Welcome back for another episode of Cyber Conversations here live at InfoSec. I'm joined by Michael, co-founder and CTO of Vendict, and we're going to go into what these guys are doing because I think it's a pretty interesting part of the industry that they're solving. But Michael, before we dive into what you're building here, why don't you give the audience a little bit of an introduction to yourself and let them know who it is that you are?
Thanks a lot. So yeah, I'm Michael Keslassy, grew up in Paris. I am co-founder of Vendict and mainly technological all my life.
Awesome. Let's dive straight into it then, because obviously you're building something pretty exciting. Talk to us a little bit about what was the inspiration behind Vendict? Where were you in your career when you and your co-founder recognized that, hey, there's an opportunity here or there's a gap in the market and we really need to do something about it?
Yeah, it's actually instead of just an opportunity, it was really a mission. It was post GDPR area. We see how the regulation about privacy changed completely the market and everyone adapted. And when we look at the technology and impact on society, we understood we need that regulation, that the tech companies need to be much more regulated. But we need to solve the innovation issue that regulation wouldn't be at the price of innovation. So looking at it, immediately we get to the compliance and security, and that's how we get to TPRM.
And I think for anybody that doesn't quite understand exactly what we're talking about here when we talk about TPRM and so on, maybe break down for the audience what is the particular part of the market here that we're looking at?
So any company today has to use other companies and software and services. So they always have vendors, third parties. So the TPRM stands for third party risk management. And the idea is that when you take someone, there's a risk around it. Maybe the service will stop, maybe there will be a data breach. So you need to analyze and do the due diligence when working with some company. And at the end, crown jewels, customer data are going to your third parties and you don't get any control, but you still stand for the risk. So that's what we are doing here to handle better the risk.
And I think it's always important to, I suppose, the reason that this is such an important part of the industry is because there's often this misconception that just because you implement a vendor, you bring in a new technology, you automatically assume, oh, if they're offering this service, this product is going to be secure. I'm safe using it. And in reality, of course, that isn't the case. What's even more interesting is over the past several years, the market has evolved so significantly with the adoption of all of these new technologies. How do you think that has made an impact within the third party risk management space? Is there anything that's really shifted that's maybe made this even more of a problem than it has been historically?
So both the problem and the solution is AI. First, there are many more regulations, so there's much more to do. There are many more vendors because that's such a huge to innovate, and innovate means you need to introduce more vendors. And overall, the TPM was always a scalability issue. You too many vendors, you couldn't manage that. And suddenly, what happened is that everyone was saying, no one can really handle it at scale, so I'm not handling it anymore. But then agentic AI produced the solution to handle it really at scale and solve the TPRM issue.
Because AI has been adopted gradually over the past few years. It's actually been around a lot longer than people realize. I think just enterprises or businesses having the trust in the fact that these products or these technologies can do what they actually say they can do is more recent. But obviously, one of the hottest things that we've probably been looking at over the past 12 months is agentic AI. And I imagine that also creates some pretty significant challenges or definitely opens up the attack surface or the threat landscape when you have a product or you're bringing in new technology that is agentic. From a kind of a customer's perspective, if they are considering these new technologies, is there anything in particular that you've seen that this is a pretty big problem that we're having to start to address? Because obviously, 18 months ago, this wasn't really a technology that enterprises were so widely consuming.
Was always a big problem that we couldn't address because there are only a couple of employees doing it, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of vendors and the whole supply chain that we can see right now on television. It was always an issue, but AI risk is another risk domain that is added to all the other risk domains: cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, like so many. Now it's not like everything according to a contract. Someone is vibe coding something, is probably is giving the data to an AI, you don't even see always who is the AI behind the scenes. So the issue it gets much, much more important.
Absolutely. And I think as well, sometimes it's a like an education piece. People don't necessarily, like I mentioned earlier, they don't realize that something that they're adopting isn't always maybe as secure as it could be. What about Basically, for the existing teams right now, they obviously know that third party risk management is still a risk. It's not a case that people are completely head buried in the sand. A lot of security teams, of course, are aware that this is something that they have to manage. Is there anything though that you've been seeing recently where it's like this is something that is being overlooked that teams aren't solving? Is there basically a gap at all where you're like, this is really a critical problem for whatever reason? People are overlooking it.
Yeah, so what to do in TPRM actually is well known. At the end, you need to look externally, all the information that you can get. You need to look at the evidence documents, everything that they provide, if it's audit reports, and analyze them really deeply. And you need to look at the questionnaire answers and see if the answers are good or not. So the theory didn't change so much, but what agentic AI is producing right now that people should pay attention is the scalability that can be solved now. Because suddenly you can ask the AI to do everything. They can automate the communication with the vendor. They can analyze the answer and flag the findings, finding the risk. Like all the theory can suddenly be applied what couldn't be applied so far.
And I think that's definitely an exciting standpoint for a company like Vendict, because obviously this is where you can kind of come in. If anybody's looking at Vendict and want to be, okay, so how does this basically fit into my existing ecosystem of products and vendors? What is the main gap that you're helping bridge and solve?
So we are bringing actually a new business model. So far, people were either using a platform and they needed to recruit a lot of TPRM specialists to do a lot of manual work of chasing vendors that are not so interesting at the end for anyone, or they were using consultant. We are providing AI native managed services, which means we are leverage a lot the AI with a layer of GRC experts for you to avoid the noise, where you can get all the findings. So we chase for you the vendors, we communicate, we analyze the answers of the questionnaire, we find all the evidence, like all the tedious work, we do it for you. And then as a TPRM specialist, you just get the bottom line, the recommendation, the remediation, and you say, I will want to work with this vendor or not, and here what is my remediation plan. So we are doing all of it, and it doesn't require so much integration. There's not a huge price to start working with us.
And I think ultimately that's it as well, isn't it? It sounds like you give people the opportunity to have the observability. I think sometimes that's the main thing, right? You don't know what you don't know. If suddenly you have somebody that's giving you all of the information on a silver platter, really, and then saying, now you can make an educated decision. And I think as well, what's really challenging in this industry is everybody talks about how noisy it is and how overwhelming it can be because everybody tells you, well, I solve all your problems. I'm super secure, this, that, and the other. When in reality, actually that's not always the case. It can be a little bit misled with marketing from a perspective of a technology leader. It can be overwhelming because there's about 3,000 things in the back of your mind, especially as a CISO. It's hard to sleep at night because I've got too much going on. We've already seen the evolution over the past couple of years and it has been rapid. I can only anticipate that trajectory is going to continue. Is there anything in particular that you're excited about when you look to the future? Is there anything in particular that maybe not excited you? This is a bit scary as we continue to see all of this technology be more widespread implemented, but also evolve.
Yeah, actually, I'm really excited and positive about the future. First, TPRM was always untractable and suddenly can solve. Also, like now you can get the full visibility. So it's not because of pricing issue. You have to scan only your 5% critical vendors, but like all your third parties, but also your fourth parties and fifth parties, the whole supply chain that the automation can be gone very strongly. And also with agentic AI, the pricing is dropping about scanning every vendor. So what would cost a lot and you couldn't get to it now is really affordable. So I'm really pushy for TPRM.
And I think as well to really hone in on that because affordability isn't something to be overlooked because this is a really expensive industry. And that is often one of the things that bootstraps security leaders is the fact that it's they get a budget and the problem with cyber is it doesn't generate revenue and it can often be a what if situation when in reality it's essential of course because the likelihood is it'll cost you significantly more to have something go wrong than it would to just pay to make sure that you're trying to prevent that from happening. But it can be really hard to get that. So when you have something that's a more cost-effective solution that's then also gives you the visibility that we talk about, you're getting all the tick boxes that you need. And this has obviously been great to unpack. But as we close out the episode here, is there anything in particular about Vendict that you guys are excited about in terms of where we sit, what we're able to offer? Is there anything that's you're like, as a founder, as someone building this business, I can't wait for this to continue happening or where we're going to have this impact in the market?
Yeah, completely. So today we are solving the TPRM, and it's a huge leapfrog compared to what could be done before. But when you think about your vendors, they are actually the basis of all your innovation in the enterprise, and mapping all the business flow, understanding like where it goes afterwards, that how the enterprise actually works. TPRM is called a lot of time extended enterprise because like it's your extension that you don't control, but that is still important. And now you can have also the view internally, and that's also where I'm really excited about.
And honestly, I can't wait to continue to see what you guys are building. I think really exciting times ahead. And if you haven't already tuned in and checked out Vendict, I highly recommend to look into what these guys are up to. So, to anybody tuning in, that's it for this episode. Thank you for following along and make sure to continue as we unpack more in InfoSec. But that is it for today's episode. So, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time for more conversations shaping cyber.